This is World Comics Review with a new microphone, which I've just discovered works a lot better if it's switched on. Also, I've managed to get the obnoxious, cringy intro working again. Right, let's get into it. This is Viz number 287. Now, when most people think of Viz Comics, they think of the American manga publisher. But this one started in 1979 in Newcastle as a kind of punk fanzine. Actually, the guys who started it did some cartoons for a different punk fanzine, but when they got it, it was so awful they decided they could do better themselves. And they still advertise punk gigs on the back most of the time. So Viz started in 1979 and was self-published through much of the 80s until around 1988 or 89. They got a proper publishing deal with Virgin Books, but later the guy who ran that spun himself out into John Brown Books, who published it for quite a long time. Around 1990 it became one of the biggest magazines in the entire UK. It even outsold some of the TV guides. And this spawned a load of rubbish imitations, though some of them were alright. I don't actually have any of the rubbish imitations, but if I ever get any I'll do the review of them. So a lot of the characters in Viz have become kind of famous in the UK. So we've got Johnny Fartpants, pretty obvious. Roger Melly, who's running an ice cream van on the cover, but actually he's kind of a really corrupt and weird TV personality. And then the Fat Slags, who kind of became infamous because they were in some TV adverts in the early 90s that a lot of people complained about. Okay, so we got, let's see these adverts for smuggling duds, which are supposed to be for you smuggling money and credit cards where it's safe, but it's pretty obvious what they're really going to be used for. Although they've got this big SD which makes it obvious to the police what you're doing. And the first story is called Baxter Basics, who's kind of a general stereotyped Tory MP. I think his name comes from, in the early 90s there was a recession and John Major, who was the Prime Minister at the time, said that people need to go back to basics and not expect to buy expensive things like video recorders and cassette players in their cars, which a lot of people made fun of. Next one is Biffa Bacon, who's kind of like a realistic version of Dennis the Menace and the other bad boy characters from the Beano and the Dandy. Child abuse has never been so funny. In this one they're playing tennis and his parents keep tricking him and throwing bricks at him. I think they said the idea for this came when they were on a train and they saw two kids fighting, but the kids' dads were encouraging them instead of breaking it up. Drunken Bakers. This is a more modern recurring character about a couple of bakers who are ridiculous alcoholics. And this one's going for a job interview at a supermarket. So yeah, if you're working at a small business and your boss is going for a job interview at a supermarket, it's probably time to start worrying. This is the Viz letter page, which is pretty famous for having weird letters pointing out stupid things, and you're never sure how many of the letters are just made up by the editors themselves. Like some guy saying, why don't we train dolphins not to eat plastic, then we can use as much as we want, because if you can train dolphins to do backflips they can't be that stupid. There's also Top Tips, which has ridiculous tips like make people think you've got a time machine by setting off a firework in the closet and then coming out dressed as a Viking. Sometime in the mid-90s McDonald's stole a lot of these top tips for TV adverts, which caused some controversy. More letters. Pretend you're the Prime Minister of Great Britain by putting a podium in the middle of the street and telling people you've resigned. This is from just after Theresa May resigned, which wasn't that long after David Cameron resigned. Then the Crown Court, about a pervert stealing bike seats to sniff, and the Queen is one of the witnesses. Here we have the Antiques Roadshow team going back in time to dinosaur times and then saving the ancestor of one of the people who brought them some antiques. Various adverts. And Kunto, the offensive card game. Bono, Hitler, Corden, don't know. Russell Brand, Rupert Murdoch, Morrissey, Black somebody, Jamie Oliver, John Oliver, honestly both of them count, Mark Zuckerberg, Robert Mugabe, and so on. That's Foodie Bollocks. This is some guy who's always asking about the artisanal ice cream and do they get their wafers from a named Italian supplier. And yeah, Viz do a lot of one-off stories too, like this one, the Manatee Jazz Band, but the what is it? Dugongs, who are like manatees but not, have stolen their place, stolen their booking. Another punk advert. Oh yeah, so this punk festival says family friendly, and the Mac Lads aren't playing at it for reasons that are probably obvious if you know anything about the Mac Lads. They're basically the musical version of Viz. And oh yeah, apparently Prince Philip got bit by a Kodomo dragon. I don't know if that actually happened or not, or if it's just something they make up. Yeah, so they've got loads of joke features about dragons and what celebrities think about them, and of course Dragon's Den, which is the is it called Shark Tank in America? I've heard your boy Zach mentioning it, but yeah, in the UK it's called Dragon's Den, but same sort of thing. Inventors bring their idea and get told to bugger off. More about dragons. They always have these weird giveaways for things that you can't possibly use because they're just made of cut-out paper. So yeah, Johnny Fart Pants again. This is the windbreak for your arse to stop you farting when you're on the beach. The Time series. This is another pretty modern comic in sort of really dead-end jobs and cheap rental places. Is always this guy kind of giving people ridiculous rules and being extremely pedantic. So he's making the guy wear nappies so he doesn't have to go to the toilet while he's working in a 0 hours warehouse. And 8 Ace, who okay, this isn't a typical 8 Ace comic strip. He normally ends up buying 8 cans of lager for £1.49, which is probably a reasonable price in the 80s when it started, but it'd be ridiculously cheap now. And getting drunk. And another one-off one. The genie with the hole in the arse of his trousers of the lamp. And you are the ref, but the ref is Nigel Farage, the leader of the Brexit party. So yeah, You Are the Ref was a feature in football comics in Britain in the past where they had to test your knowledge of the rules of football. Evangelical, kind of like a Jehovah's Witness or Jack Chick type. I should probably do some Jack Chick tracks on this channel actually. Oh yeah, these adverts. I mean these articles. So yeah, every single Viz, or most of them, since I don't know, sometime in the 80s or 90s, has these sort of tell-all stories about people who were either doing exciting jobs or met loads of A-list celebrities, even though they're driving the number 17 bus in Doncaster. But actually they're just obviously petty criminals or perverts, and they're trying to use these ideas as a excuse for why they shouldn't be prosecuted. So yeah, this guy's saying he was an undercover cop in the Daventry PD, and his chief sounds like an amalgamation of various 70s cop shows from America. Buying car adverts. Advert for remote car parks for airports which are at least 50 miles away from the airport. Tony Parsol. So this is a parody of a real journalist in the UK called Tony Parsons, who writes obituaries for celebrities, but this one just keeps repeating himself and going over and over the same points, and at the end he's always like, yeah, that's 750 words, give me an invoice. The Mail Online. This is a fairly modern character based on the Daily Mail's website. So the Daily Mail's like the Mail Online is mostly infamous for having sort of it girls who are teenagers, and then as soon as they reach 18 they post loads of glamour shots of them and say they're all grown up. And the Daily Mail newspaper is kind of a famous right-wing tabloid that talks about conspiracy theories or asks for video games to be banned. So yeah, this guy's basically my spirit animal. In another one they had him say, my granddad had a blue passport when he liberated Europe from socialism, which is supposed to be a joke, but it's now something I always say. And Oh, the Profanisaurus. So every year they bring out a new dictionary with various obscene phrases and swear words. Let's find a good one. Oh yeah, like bumsick. That should be pretty obvious what that is. And FaceTime, the amount of time you spend actually talking to someone in real life rather than on your phone, or the time you spend dropping your yogurt onto someone's face. Oh, here's the fat slags. Joining the 4-foot high club, having sex in the back of a bus, but it turns out they're having sex with the bus driver, who's just tied the steering wheel and put a brick on the accelerator so it keeps going round the roundabout over and over. Wee Raggy Joe. This is Tom Patterson, who used to work for the Genteel Children's Comics in the UK, and now he does strips of Viz, which are in the same style but full of swearing and sex references and drugs. And a Powerball. They're always advertising these, but no one knows what they are. Oh, this is another advert that's always in Viz. The Stories of the British Wrestlers. It always has it says number 3, but I'm sure it always has the same character, and it looks like a fanzine from the 70s that's been made on a typewriter and then put together out of bits and pieces. I will buy it one day and review it on this channel just to see what it is. Major Misunderstanding, another kind of stereotyped Daily Mail reader who always misunderstands what people are doing. Like someone's lost her wedding ring in a salad, but he's like, "Oh yes, we all know you're vegan. Stop talking about your salad." And fake newspaper articles. Miss Brady, Old Lady, another fairly long-running story. They think she's going to die, but actually she's just in hospital for a hernia or something. But yeah, the other friend dies instead. And Bad Bob, the Randy Wonder Dog. So this is based on a traditional British comic called Black Bob, who's like a dog in Scotland who solves crimes. And this one humps people's legs instead while the police try to solve the crimes. So yeah, that's Fizz. Kind of started off as an obscure fanzine, became popular for doing stories in the style of traditional British children's comics of the time, but with sex and swearing. And then I've just seen 8 aces really small over there. And then became super famous in the early 90s. So everyone did rip-offs of it, which were nowhere near as good. Although some of them were alright. There's a blog that reviews them. I'll put it link in the description. And then its sales kind of dropped off to where they are now. I think about 10 to 15,000 a month. Or not a month, it comes out 10 times a year. So 10 to 15,000 whenever it comes out. And everyone always says it's not as funny as it used to be. But to be fair, they were saying it's not as funny as it used to be since issue 2. So that's it for now. I'll probably get some more videos up pretty soon. I want to kind of review comics from a lot of different times and places, at least to begin with. I might settle down into some sort of category a bit later. So watch out for more videos pretty soon.